you as a business owner should have every right to deal with whomever you want, whenever you want, for whatever reason you want. It's interesting when you start talking about the government regulating who they will and will not work with. There has to be some way to make sure that money is not being spent in ways that don't align with the values that the constituency holds. It makes sense for us to try and protect those industries that are central to Idaho's way of life.
Good morning, Idaho. Welcome to the local Yocal Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. For those tuning in for the first time, we'd like to have a little banter before we get into the stories, but I understand if you are short on time, so we provided the timestamps in the description so you can jump straight to the stories that you are interested in. For those that stayed with us for the banter, glad to have you here today. Hopefully you are staying cool. I know I am definitely trying to. You can see by my sleeves being rolled up, trying to even stay warm while recording this because the lights have a habit of warming things up. I know we talked about it a week or two, I guess maybe two. No, it was just a week now, about ways to stay cool if you're getting a little stir crazy, because I know I definitely do when the heat gets this hot and I don't want to get out. Hopefully that's a wonderful resource for you, because I know Idaho has definitely turned on the afterburners when it comes to heat. Not quite as hot as it was, like 111 a couple weeks back, but definitely still toasty warm, especially with all the fires and other stuff that are going on around the state. But with that said, someone that also knows how to usually stay cool and enjoys the water sports way more than I do, I have John co-hosting with me again today.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back, and goodness gracious, it is hot. I know. So you mentioned water sports. We just came from the pool. We were there this afternoon. Yeah, the water was nice and cool, and it was hot. So it ended up being nice. I liked it. It's a great way to spend a hot summer afternoon is in the water.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that the heat drops off a little bit in the evening, because I've been sneaking out for walks after sunset to try to go do that. And that's really nice. And there is something special about those late evening summer walks or early morning even. There's just a certain smell in the air, feel, and look, and you don't get it any other time of year, but it's really nice. It's not cool per se. It's going to be a bit sweaty, but it still is really pretty.
You mentioned evening. What I love more is the morning, where it's really because it starts getting cool at around 9-ish, or starts not being as hot.
Right.
But it doesn't really cool down until 3, and that's a really long time to stay up.
Right.
But getting up early is nice. I'm not a huge fan of getting up early, but I have to be at work at 7:30, so I'm waking up and getting outside and driving to work, and it's actually nice. I enjoy that morning drive.
Oh, yeah. It's this weird thing. If you're able to put the work and effort in for the early morning, there is something truly special. And I think our grandfathers or fathers, to an extent, have it right, that there's something about getting up and enjoying that. And yeah, it takes a lot of work and dedication to make sure to get to bed on time, especially with all of our myriad of electronics that distract us and try to keep us up and stuff. But it really is something very special to enjoy that. But interesting side note, when you mentioned that, I thought of it. Jordan Peterson, he was joking at one point, and just a side note, but it was a funny thing to me that, especially with our culture, it seems like everyone has gotten less early bird and more night owl. I'm guilty as charged. And he joked that he'd have a lot of protesters and stuff at his events, and someone asked him, how did you stop that? Because you don't hear about that as much recently. And he said, I planned all my speeches or seminars at 8 a.m. And amazingly, none of the protesters, none of the writers, no one showed up, and I was able to do my stuff just fine, because none of them were willing to get up at 8 a.m. to come protest.
Because he does the event too early for anything to happen. That's hilarious. Someone should tell the Trump people that morning is best, apparently. Try and avoid the crazies out there.
Yeah, especially if you're just hearing it for the first time. I don't know quite how, but I understand here in Idaho, some of us like to stay off the internet for the sake of our sanity. Others of us can't do that. But it was on Saturday. There was an attempted assassination on Trump. Thankfully, it only clipped his ear there. By God's providence, he tilted his head a little bit, and that did not end with death.
Gosh. Yeah, it was insane. I know you tipped me off to it. You sent me a link to the Daily Wire, but my goodness, the fallout from that. So we're recording this on, it's Tuesday night on the 16th. So it's only been a couple days, but the fallout from that has been crazy. Like I know we're not going to talk about it much, but
Which, not because we don't want to, but for you, the viewer, I know I get bothered sometimes when you're watching one form of content or something, and they are like, well, this is a big thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's a big thing, but I watch you for that thing and not those.
Right.
Granted, I know this is a big national thing, and some people, I have no doubt, listen to this as their news, and news obviously to a degree, but it's still something that I wanted to touch on briefly.
it's the question of how is this going to affect Idaho. I think that's one of the questions that's important to ask is how does the big national news affect us here? How does it roll downhill? And I think one way it's going to roll downhill is I have a really hard time seeing Trump not be president at this point.
Yeah.
One of the pollsters said it. He said that event made any Trump supporter a Trump voter. And that's enough. That's all he needed. He just needed all of his supporters to vote for him, and he will get elected. And
Right.
every swing state will presumably now swing for Trump.
A perfect example of that is someone that I know in the most crazy terms. If you haven't heard of them, the Young Turks, their main host, I can't remember his name.
Cenk.
Yeah, something
Unger?
like that.
Uyghur?
He posted like on Twitter or something where it was like the first part of his tweet was like a disclaimer of, okay, I don't like the guy, blah, 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 blah. But the last bit was, you know, I don't want to use it because there's a little bit of foul language, but basically, go Trump. I was like, if you can convert that guy, that's pretty.
He's a bad man. Is the
I don't know if you saw it or not.
Oh, yeah. He said that one more credit to Trump and his fans today, and only today, Trump sticking the hand up and saying fight while the crowd chanted USA was bad.
Thing.
Yeah.
Which I didn't expect. You expect it to a certain degree from some of the political people. I know Obama gave a statement and Biden gave a statement, but part of that is you don't want to come across, especially if you're a politician, as being insensitive. You want to seem that I care about human life, and yeah, there's this fight. We're Americans at broad, and so they said some platitudes and stuff, but it was really interesting to see some of the people that came out of the woodworks that maybe never would have said anything positive about Trump, and we're just like, yeah, I have my problems, but anybody that wants to, that's not worth I'm voting for the guy, basically just out of spite almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that picture of him holding his fist up with the blood splatter on his face, that's going to go down in history.
Oh, yeah.
It's in terms of images that have the power to change national attentions, that goes up there with planting the flag on Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
And that's not my original thought. That's something I stole from any number of people. But yeah, the other interesting thing to me is the empty platitudes that were given. You mentioned that Biden and
Obama,
other folks talked about this. But what's really funny is the way they talked about it. They're all talking about it in terms of, wow, this means that we all need to lower the temperature. All of us, specifically Donald Trump, needs to lower the temperature. You need to lower the temperature. This coming from the party that has pretty well said that Donald Trump is Hitler. Literally Hitler.
I think it was a week. No, yeah, it was literally about a week to the date. I know, it's Saturday, so it would have been like a Monday or something. I want to say it was the Washington Post. Don't quote me on it. I can't remember. I was listening to it on Michael Knowles. Ran this whole giant op-ed, and it had this artist rendition of Trump, and it was in a Hitler form or whatever. And it was just this total piece of trying to tie, we do this. If it's the worst thing ever, call it Trump, because that's the worst thing it could be called in American politics. But basically running this whole piece, and one person could look at that as, okay, yeah, you're just calling your political opponent Hitler. But if the worst thing in our political thing is to be called Hitler, and that is the greatest threat to us, if you're able to successfully paint or make a person believe that Trump is Hitler, then doing some so-said actions seem far more justifiable if that person is seen as a tyrant or a dictator or a threat.
Well, because who would not have assassinated Hitler? That would have been a good thing. There were whole missions created to do that. Mm-hmm. And shoot, we have several pieces of fiction at this point that either fantasize about what if it happened, or historical fiction about actual plots that failed. There are two movies that come to my mind right off the top of it. One was Valkyrie, and the other one was Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Which That word might not be family friendly on this show, but hey, it's the name of a movie. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But they both fantasized about the assassination of Hitler, and that would have been a great thing. And if you're saying this man is literally Hitler, wouldn't it be a good thing? If that's actually true.
If that starting premise is true and you run it through your logical syllogism, what is going to be your end output or result? People often in the modern age will think things are subjective. And to a certain degree, you're right about the feelings half, but we've lumped logic with feelings, and wrongly so. For many years of Western culture, it was understood, no, there is a almost mathematical equation to understanding if you have a logical argument. And you can sit there and be like, if this is that, part to whole, part to sum, different components, it can be coherent. And if you're following it logically from that premise, you do reach that point, which puts the Democratic Party in this really weird quandary of if they say, if Trump's not Hitler, he's not the ultimate evil, right? Then all the things they've done and the way that they prosecute him is unjustified, and they are just the most horribly bigoted people and not inclusive people ever. Or if they do agree that he is Hitler and double down on that position, then they are endorsing or glad that an assassination attempt was tried on a former president, which both of these are bad. And that seems to be the theme of the Democratic Party lately is both of them are bad. Which one do you want?
Also, if Trump is literally Hitler, why are Democrats happy he's okay? Like, why are they calling for unity with literally Hitler? Again, I don't understand. So there was an educator in the late 1800s, early 1900s, Charlotte Mason, and she was very fond of logic and teaching logic. And one of the things that she was a firm believer in was the idea that your train of thought can be logical, but if your logical train of thought starts with a wrong premise, then every station on the way is going to take you further and further away from the truth. And the example that she brings up as the most egregious of all time is the murder of Jesus. Because the Jews had a premise that Jesus is not God.
So he's blasphemy.
Jesus is not the Son of God. Right, it's blasphemy that Jesus says he is God. Therefore, if he is actually blaspheming, then it's perfectly good and right for him to end the way he did. They did what Scripture told them to do. Problem is, that was a wrong premise because Jesus is God. And so therefore, their premise was wrong and they ended up killing God. Now, if you don't believe, that's fine. It is what it is. Take it as a story or take it as the thought or the example of how logic works. So if you start with a premise that is incorrect, you end up at an answer or at a final destination that is so wrong, it's unthinkably wrong. And that's where we're at right now, where we've traded truth for feelings. But then as humans, we can't get rid of that logical process. It's something that's ingrained in us. We still take steps to get to an end point. And I don't think we as humans can't do that. Like it's not a thing that we're incapable of. We can do it poorly.
Yep.
And some people are more logical than others, but we're created as logical beings, and that's just how we think.
It comes back to that core premise from the Christian faith is if we're made as image bearers of God, even as fallen ones, one of the key attributes of God is he is a God of reason, a God of order, a God of logic. He is the Logos was with him and the Logos was him. And thus, even a sinner does have a logic. That the thing you get into logic is your syllogism, your overall argument, your reasoning process. You can have an entire logical process that is logically valid. It follows through the premises and is logically coherent. It works logically. But if your premises or your presuppositions are invalid, you can have an argument that, yes, that logically flows, but your beginning premises are incorrect. But what you want to strive for is making sure the premises you're working from are correct, then follow them through logical conclusions to get to the right arrival. And so I try to do it oftentimes here on the program and other stuff that we do. For the most part, there's only 1%, but we get a little trigger happy there. 99% of anybody you interact with, they do have a logic that gets them to that end point. No matter how insane that end point is, most people do, that justifies the reason that they do that action. Usually, if it's a more crazy conclusion, it's because they started with flawed premises, flawed positions. And you equally could, and as a Christian, we would look at that and say, I'm a sinner too, and I equally could have done that as well, and to have love and compassion on that person to help them see the error of that original premise they followed through.
And that's where it's interesting when you look at logical processes, because like I said, and like you said, we all have a logical thought process. Some of us think through those premises and we work through it and make sure that we're dealing with truth. But honestly, so many people at this point, we've taught that feelings are more valid than truth. Follow your heart and you'll never be wrong. That's the most backwards advice ever, because the heart is deceitful among all things. Follow your heart and you'll always be wrong. That being said, we've traded truth for feelings. And Ben Shapiro's favorite line, facts don't care about your feelings. Man, the inverse of that is just as true, if not even more so. My feelings don't care about your facts. I will feel however I feel like feeling, no matter what the facts actually are.
Right.
Which is a scary thought.
It is a very scary thought, but pulling, I guess, that depth, because me and John love to go to them, and coming back full circle to it. The conspiracy theories will boil around, and anything I try to encourage here on the show and program is wait for the dust to settle before you make any big decisions or conclusions or spread stuff. Wait until you know for a shadow of a doubt certain things are true, because especially with something like this, something that honestly is heard all around the world because America is such a superpower, right? There's going to be a lot of speculation and a lot of flack thrown in the air. But as far as the reports are giving that the shooter that attempted to assassinate Trump has been killed, moving forward with the aftermath, I know the general things that can be guaranteed for sure is that there's going to be a lot of being put into the Secret Service on what happened there. Also, something that I'm not seeing a ton of sources reporting on, but I've heard, is that the Secret Service will not be doing the investigation for the assassination because they have a vested interest of making it, in a sense, look good or not as bad for them. Mm-hmm. So according to legal law and stuff, it gets handed over to the FBI now for what it's worth, and maybe some people have some gripes with the FBI, and that's fairly warranted in recent decades. But that's the people that will be doing the investigation half of it. We will see where that goes from here. Last I heard, he's at the convention there in Wisconsin, I think it is, or is it
Minneapolis.
Yeah. So
it's in Minneapolis. Not only is he there at that, but he also picked a VP. Yep. I don't know if you caught that, but J.D. Vance is going to be the VP. So it's going to be interesting moving forward from here. So we'll see what happens with that. But bringing it back home to Idaho, I think the question is, again, how does this affect us? And I'm going to go with the line I've been saying. If politics is downstream of culture, well, we're seeing a huge cultural movement, and we're seeing politics fall in line with that, which is very exciting. And we're seeing that here in Idaho.
Idaho has a red culture. That is predominantly what Idaho is in. There is a culture war that exists, and it's definitely here in Idaho. And if you don't think it is, I would appeal to you to look a little bit closer, because it is here. But because of that red culture, it's a little bit more hidden. You see that conflict specifically with this incident with Trump, between the two sides getting more and more polarized, kind of pulling further apart. What will be interesting to see is then how that gets resolved. I don't know quite how that works, if one side sees the end results of that functioning and how it happens. But I do know for a fact here in Idaho, with the stuff with Trump, it has increased more of a grassroots effort. Originally in Idaho politics, you would hear people okay, I want to reduce taxes, I want to do this. And now you hear on the Idaho legislature and floor, no, this is bad, this is good, and very heated debates and arguing and back and forth. And I got involved because of this, and I got involved because of that. And a very grassroots, very passionate, very vocal Republican Party in Idaho, even within even the squishy types. And that's only, I think, going to grow and get strengthened as Trump continues to move either towards the presidency or get into another term, and in the coming probably years to come. But with all that said, if we're talking about Idaho politics here and the implications of that, we really need to look at the bills that are being signed. and what the end product is that's coming down in Idaho's political stuff. And that brings us to our Idaho bill breakdown. This week, we'll be looking at Senate Bill 1291, which is no public dollars, go woke, go broke type of phrase. On the right and on the left here in American politics, we've seen how big corporations seem to control legislation. An example of that often given is Pride Month in June, where big companies said we were going to accept Pride or else, basically. In the end, corporations only have this power because we give it to them. This comes in two ways. One is us buying their stuff, which in theory is pretty easy to stop doing. Granted, we like cheap stuff, so it can be a bit tricky to do at times, especially Costco. If you didn't know, Costco's pretty left-leaning. Hate to break the news to you there. And then the other one is government contracts. They're a bit harder and more frustrating to stop because we as consumers per se can't just be like, I'm not going to spend government contracts. No, that's the government. So it takes more legislative things to do to stop that. With this bill that we'll be looking at, Idaho Bill Breakdown, it tries to ban corporations and companies from getting taxpayer money if they're boycotting certain sectors that we, Idahoans, care about. In this segment, we'll be looking at how it affects the free market and where exactly your tax dollars have been going and where they're going now. We'll start off here by first looking at what exactly the bill says. So if, John, you want to jump into that for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 1291, which was sponsored by Senator Doug Ricks in the Senate and Representative Barbara Earhart in the House, expands anti-boycott measures to other sectors. It prohibits public entities in Idaho from entering into contracts worth more than $100,000 or more with companies that have 10 or more full-time employees, unless the company certifies that it's not boycotting certain sectors. The protected sectors include fossil fuel-based energy, timber, minerals, hydroelectric power, nuclear energy, agriculture, firearms. The bill defines boycott as refusing to deal with, terminating business with, or taking actions intended to penalize or limit commercial relations with individuals or organizations in these sectors without a reasonable business purpose. Now, before this bill, Idaho had the Anti-Boycott Against Israel Act, Section 67-2346 Idaho Code. Now, this law prohibited public entities from contracting with companies boycotting Israel or territories under its control for contracts valued at $100,000 or more. With Senate Bill 1291, it expanded to include 7 other sectors, those 7 that we just mentioned.
So yeah, in conclusion, this bill is essentially Idaho's way of ensuring that companies contracting with the state are not taking actions against industries that are important to our state's economy and basically identity in some ways. It's part of a broader national trend where states are pushing back against corporate boycotts and divestment campaigns targeting certain industries. Generally, how this will change things here in Idaho, the first will be that state agencies, local governments, and other public entities will need to ensure that the companies they contract with are not boycotting these specific industries. Companies seeking large contracts with Idaho public entities will need to provide written certification that they're not engaging in such boycotting. So both ways there. And then existing contracts that violate this new law will need to be brought into compliance, like the companies basically need to be brought into compliance or they'll not be renewed. And that brings us into the application here. And I think the first part that I could guess a person would have some concerns and worries about is the free market side of it, that we're saying X company, we're not going to do business with you because of these things unless the government is approving or disapproving of a certain way in the market. And to a degree, I think that's fair. But I would push back slightly that we're not talking about the government going into regulatory body, going in and regulating how all the businesses do their stuff. It just says, hey, if you want to build that road over there, we really would also like that you don't boycott us actually using our minerals or actually using and mining oil out of the ground. So if you're going to build the road, you have to be pro us to build our roads. So if you don't, sorry, we're not going to give you the money because we can actually... That's what our constituents don't want, and our constituents have voted for a bill that doesn't let us spend money on people who don't like us. So I get the free market concern, but I don't see how this isn't wielding the legislative levers of power in a really good way that's virtuous for society.
Yeah, it's interesting when you start talking about the government regulating who they will and will not work with. And while I will say that the free market, you as a business owner should have every right to deal with whomever you want, whenever you want, and deny your services to whomever you want for whatever reason you want. Honestly, I really don't care. when it comes to the government, there has to be some way to make sure that money is not being spent in ways that don't align with the values that the constituency holds.
Right.
Because the government in and of itself should have no values. The government itself is a reflection of the values of the community that represents...
That they're representing.
Yes, that the government represents. And so I would argue that this is probably a good thing, because we don't want our government boycotting industries that we as Idahoans hold dear.
Right.
Or are driving our economy forward. Now, if those industries are performing gross atrocities, then we can work with that. We can figure out ways to stop that. But of that list of industries I rattled off, I don't see gross atrocities happening. Now, you might say fossil fuel-based industry if you're a
tree hugger.
Greenpeace tree hugger. That's what I was going for. Couldn't find it. If you're a tree hugger, that might be like the worst thing ever.
The timber might be worse. I don't know. I go back and forth there.
It depends on how much you care about oil and CO2 emissions and how much you care about forests. Although I will say, we have more trees on planet Earth now than we ever have in history.
Use them. They're a renewable resource. Sorry, it came out.
Exactly. Trees grow. It's great. And we found ways to make them grow fast. Yeah, minerals, minerals, like mining them, there's gas emissions. So, like nuclear energy, people get scared of that stuff. Agriculture, I mean, cows fart. And that's
people have
methane.
Problems with that.
So I have problems with that sometimes. It smells. It smells. But yeah, these are things that I don't see gross atrocities happening. And so it would make sense to say, look, we have to make sure that we're going to be okay with these industries and working with them. And that makes sense to me.
Person out there, I think there's also an argument that can even be made if you do see them as being atrocities or something, then come up with a solution that is just so irrevocably better than the current option, and market demand will go that way. If you can make an electric car legitimately that can replace the range, it is cheaper fuel. Obviously, electric has less maintenance because there's less moving parts. It's more reliable. You're not going to have to force people to buy it. It's going to be superior. It works better, and the market's going to move that way, and it's going to get used. Even if consumers have a thing against it, commercial's going to go buy it because commercial doesn't care about feeling. Commercial wants what is cheap, efficient, and the best tool for the job, and they'll buy it. And so if you're saying that though there are atrocities, there are bad things happening, and we can't stand for fossil fuels and our integrity be damned or whatever else, well, come up with a better option. That would be my answer. But as it stands right now, if we're looking on the other end of it, maybe you're saying there's the environmental element that you're pushing for. And if we're looking there again on the other side of humanity, image bearers of God, the single best way to bring people out of poverty, to improve their quality of life, is fossil fuels, taking these resources, using them. As a Christian, I'd say God gave us this world to enjoy and have dominion over, and as long as we're responsibly consuming and using and utilizing these resources, that's not a bad thing. But also pulling on the thread I mentioned earlier in the opening part of this, big companies in America, I think the left and right, we can get on this train to a certain degree, seem to have their own way with things and their own regulations in a sense, and sometimes they can almost write their own rule books, and it frustrates us. I will say even on the right, and I know it does on the left to a certain degree, depending on the industry. And so having regulations where the government's like, hey, no, part of the reason you have the power is because we give you the money. If the populace wants to give you the money, that's one thing, that's on the populace. But if we're giving you the money and the people don't want it, and through legislative action they remove it, I think that's a wonderful exercise, especially when it's on things that are so central to Idaho's industries. Mining is something that's been in our history for a long time. If you want, go look at our series or segment that we did on that talking about Idaho's mining heritage. If we're talking about ag, if you look at our export, we did a video on that, how much Idaho exports in ag. There's a ton of that. Fossil fuels, maybe not as much there, but it helps all those things move around the state a lot more efficiently. So all of these things, if you're coming and you're taking my tax dollars and then turning around and using some of those tax dollars to then say the very thing that allows my state to be what my state is are bad and evil and I need to stop, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Yeah, it makes sense for us to try and protect those industries that are central to Idaho's way of life.
Right.
So I like where this is going. It makes sense to me. It's encouraging companies to do business in ways that will benefit the state. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Boiling that all down into a little bit of a takeaway, and we try to do that here on the Idaho Bill Breakdown. The first thing I would just say is that, in a weird way, because when we hear about this, usually we cringe. Maybe the more left-leaning person won't. But this means more regulations on Idaho's tax dollars and where they're going. I know, libertarian, calm down. More regulations on where your money's going is actually a good thing because it's the tax dollars. You want it to go to a certain place, so you need to regulate where it goes. It's like pipes. If you want water to go there, you don't just throw water in the ground. You make a pipe to get it down there. So this, I would say that's one part that's going to be doing. The other one is not allowing companies that boycott Idaho values to get Idaho money, which in the end I think is a win for all of us. It'll be interesting to see as this is applied. It went into law on July 1st of this year, so it is in effect. It'll be interesting to see if there are any contracts that do not work or go through. One of them that I don't know if it's exactly tied, but the lime company contracts with the city of Boise, and they are a more far left-leaning company. I don't know if that contract's going to be able to hold up under that. Granted, it's only in the Severn category, so they're not saying on the I. But there again, politics is a slow battle, so who knows? Maybe this next session we might see them wanting to add some other things on that list of how you might be excluded from getting public dollars. Which, if you enjoyed that segment on Idaho Bill Breakdown and want to see more of them and just have enjoyed the show thus far, make sure to follow us or subscribe on us on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter to stay up to date on all things Idaho. For even more content and to support our work, you can check out our Substack page that we're working on building out there. Also, if you found our content valuable, please like and share it with friends and family to spread the word about our beautiful state and to keep Idahoans like yourself informed and engaged. Thank you for being part of the local Yocal Idaho community. Now, on to the next segment. As we talked about last week about all the heat and trying to beat it and find different ways to cool off and stuff, one thing where you just have to join the heat and accept it is fair season. As we're coming to that here in Idaho, I know it's something that we all love to do, and it is an activity that is just an Idahoan pastime for the summers to come. In this segment, we're going to be looking at an overview of the state fairs and some of the county fairs that are coming up here in the state and what you might expect, times and dates, because sometimes they can creep on you really quick. And if you're new to Idaho, maybe give you an overview of the fairs. The first one and the biggest one is, the first part we're going to look at is at the state fairs. There's about 3 in the state. Each one's for each general area in the state. The largest one you have is the Western Idaho Fair. It'll be going from August 16th to the 25th this year. It's located at the Expo Idaho Fairgrounds there in Boise. It is one of the largest in the state, as you can guess, in the most populated area. Offers a wide variety of attractions. I know one of them that they've had for a couple years, and this might be a return. I can't remember. It seems familiar, but they have the Old Town Creamery exhibit with hands-on with agricultural stuff and different experiences there. I think they're going to have some antique farm equipment and different stuff there as well. There's the Butler Carnival and rides and games if you like those. One I haven't heard about that they're doing this year, but the All-Alaskan Racing Pig. So if you like watching pig races, that will also be something you can enjoy. They're doing daily there. They'll have another one that's a unique one, Violin on Fire. It's being done by a music actor by Patrick. How would you say that? Contreras? Contreras. So if you want to see something shock and awe, even I, who am not a big music person, would find that maybe interesting. I know there's a couple special events I found when I was doing research for this. Opening day on August 16th. They're going to have the 4-H FAA events, including rabbit meat pen judging and then a horse show. Then they'll have some grandstand concerts. Doors open for the concert at about 6:30 p.m., plus some different educational and stuff going on there as well. Which I know that fair's the one that I've gone to the most. Have you been to that one, or have you usually been to the Canyon County one, John?
I am not a fair aficionado. While I was in, at least not here in Idaho, I used to frequent the fairs in Michigan where I grew up and see as many of the live shows as I could catch there. I have not actually been to our local fairs here in Idaho yet.
Ooh, fun.
Although I do know that there are some good shows coming to the fairs. So
that would be an interesting thing to put out to you, the viewer. Do you go to the fairs for the shows? Because I know some people go for the rides. I've heard that part. And I've also heard, as I've gotten older more and more, that people go for like the music or the shows or things that get performed there. And then I guess I'm just like the old person type of person that I will go for the food judging and the photography and the animals and stuff, even though I know the animal part, sometimes farmers will go to that to try to just see if they're going to buy certain livestock or different things or stuff, or to see certain people they want to pull on for training or farm work. But would I be inaccurate in that, John, or do you think that might be right there?
No, I think you hit them on the head. There are people that go to the fair for the shows. There are people that go to the fair for the rides. And then there are people that go to the fair for the food.
Oh, I forgot about the food. That's right.
Yeah. No, there's all the fair food.
Have you ever had an elephant ear?
I can't say I have.
Okay, imagine, how would I describe it? It's like this, it's cooked through, so it's not like squishy or whatever else, in a sense of like doughy or soupy or something. But it's almost this kind of floppy, very thin, almost like pancake, if I'm trying to describe it. And then it's covered in cinnamon and sugar, and it's almost deep fried to a certain degree. And it's just this sugary, sweet, creamy, fluffy type of thing. It's called an elephant ear. I know my father, if we're going to do nothing else with the fair, we're going to make sure that we get elephant ears, because that's the only time of year that you can get it, unless the vendor that does it will be at some special event or something where they get called for it.
So I heard the best description of fair food, or I read the best description of fair food the other day. It was written by Brandon Sanderson, a fantasy author. And he said that fair food is best described this way: as when you take the first bite, it is the best thing you have ever tasted in your entire life. And then by the end of eating the entire thing, you feel sick and like you want to die because the food was it was terrible. And that's exactly what that sounds like. The first bite is probably the greatest thing ever. And by the end of it, you're going to die.
Probably. Granted, the dangerous part about it is I have never finished an elephant ear and thought, I don't need another one.
Then maybe it's by the second or third one that you feel like you're going to die.
Praise the Lord.
No,
I have restraint then.
Man, in Albuquerque, it was Indian tacos. That was the thing.
What is that like?
Oh, man, it was fantastic. So it was fried flatbread. And on top of the fried bread
Masa
goes...
flatbread?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was like a thick tortilla. Not quite pita. That's more Greek, but I don't know. It was flatbread. Like a thick tortilla? I don't know. Like it's flatbread. I don't
know the thing that the thing is.
The thing. Oh, Biden. Anyway, fried flatbread. And on top of that goes all of your taco stuff. Your refried beans, and then your meat, and then some cheese and lettuce and sour cream and salsa. And then green chili, and it's fantastic. And it's like just a taco or a taco salad, but instead of it being like wrapped in a tortilla or you eat it with tortilla chips, no, you eat it with this, I don't know, it's fried flatbread, and it was fantastic. It was so good.
That sounds so delicious.
Good. Yeah. But anyway, so we talked about the Western Idaho Fair. Let's get back on track here. Did we talk about when it's operating?
Yeah, so at the top there, let's see.
I don't remember how far we got.
We got to a bit. I know I have some of the operating hours for the weekdays. It's going to be from 12 p.m. to 11 p.m., so a bit of a time. Weekends, it'll be from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and then the final day will be August 25th, which they'll close at about 10 p.m. there. But then that kind of sends us over to Eastern Idaho there, which if you want to take that one, John.
Yeah, so that one runs from August 30 all the way through to September 7. So I guess that's only a week. But anyway, it's in Blackfoot. And some of the grandstand events here are August 30, Morgan Wallen is performing. I don't know that name, so that one will be one to look up. But then there's the rodeo from September 2 to 4. And then Jeff Foxworthy shows up. So if you're smarter than a fourth grader, you might want to go see a show. Fourth grader? Fifth grader? I don't remember the line. Anyway, that's a good one. And then to top it all off, on September 6th, you have one of the greatest bands ever. Don't Stop Believin', because Journey's coming to town. Don't stop believing.
We pray that no copyright came from it.
Yeah, that's all right. But then other attractions, you've got Harry Mutual races, whatever those are, Indian relay races, which that might be racist, I don't know. Then you've got the carnival with over 100 amusement rides, so that's cool. Free activities, and then stage performances throughout the fairgrounds, so that's also awesome. There's eating contests, which those are a lot of fun. Commercial vendors, concessionaries, competitions, exhibits, fair things. There's lots of fair stuff there. VIP memberships are available for early ticket access and exclusive discounts. And then you can check out the detailed daily schedule. It'll be released. It's either released now or it will be released shortly. So if you're over in that area, definitely go check out the fair. Sounds awesome. You might even find some elephant ears.
Who knows? I maybe that might be something over here in Western Idaho. Maybe I'll have to post something when all the fairs are going and be like, all right, mission.
Right? Is it a thing?
Operation Elephant Ear. Is it everywhere? Which,
right?
I mean...
But yeah, definitely go check out Journey, because they're awesome.
John would know. He is the authority on that. I am not when it comes to music.
I'm not an authority on live shows, though. So I'm curious, is Journey actually a decent live show? I assume they are.
Is there a difference? I've never gone to a concert. Is there a difference between a live and recorded?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So much different. So what's interesting with a live show, maybe from the 60s and 70s, like your recordings were more live anyway. But these days, your recordings are so produced that seeing a band live is fun because things can go wrong. Things can go sideways, or things can go in a different direction than you thought. I've gone to several shows in my day. Not as many as other people, but I don't know, live shows are just fun. There's a different energy about the music. You have people interacting with each other. It's just fun. Live shows are great. They're fun.
I've done to that is usually going for classical music or stuff. I forgot my bow tie somewhere, so my apologies. It's showing a little bit, but my apologies to all the country folk out there.
Even then, though, listening to classical music on a recording is so different than experiencing an orchestra play live and in front of you. There's just something magical about music that is created in front of your face. There's something to it. I don't know what it is. There's magic in the air.
Knowing what some people would say, that does something for the soul. That's what I hear to a degree.
That's right. But anyway, so that's the Eastern Idaho Fair. So what about the Northern Idaho Fair?
So yeah, the Northern Idaho one, it's from August 16th to the 25th. It'll be up there in Coeur d'Alene being the main area, over there by Kathleen Avenue and Government Way. As for activities, they'll have some goat shows there, a youth archery event that will be happening, some other community activities, rodeo events, they're again like most of them the typical kind of fair stuff. Some concerts, those I wasn't quite able to grab the details for, but they should be up on the website there soon. Some motorsports, so that should be fun, and some draft horses shows and polls and stuff there. So that should be pretty cool as well. Plus, I would hope that there would be some specific kind of like mountainous or northern Idaho things that they're going to do there, but I've actually never been to that. I think I may have been to the Eastern Idaho once, so I can give an idea of it, but Northern Idaho is one that I have not been at before. I'm going to guess maybe they'll let you take your firearms in after certain regulation and stuff, but we'll see what pans out there. But that kind of brings us also then, if you're, you like the state fairs, there's 3 of them, but you want more to go to, there's also the smaller county fairs. Every county usually has one. Some of them vary in size and breadth of what they do. The main one here in the western part of the state is the Canyon County Fair. That one will be starting much sooner than the Western Idaho one. It'll be on July 25th to 28th. It'll have kind of the usual fair events. I think they're going to have some different people playing and stuff. It's mostly going to be country, so if that's what you like, you can go look that up there. I know they have different photography competitions, painting stuff, many of the different baking of things, lots of different livestock stuff and presentations. I think there's a rodeo element as well there. So if you like that, the Canyon County and the Western Idaho State Fair go back and forth at times. Granted, the State Fair is a little larger because of some outside funding, but if you want something that's a little bit more local feeling, you can go to the Canyon County one. There's the Elmore County Fair as well that's on this end of the valley. I haven't been to it, but it'll be from July 17th to the 20th. There again, usual fair events. That's one I haven't been to per se, but I've heard some people that have really enjoyed it. If you're over in Eastern Idaho, there is the Bonneville County Fair that will be August 1st to the 8th. So a little bit of a shorter run time there. They're going to have a bouncy house for children, obviously some livestock exhibits. If you're a runner, hopefully the heat's down. There'll be a farm life 5K run. Also, there'll be different displays, 4-H projects, which for any of you that are outside the state or moved in here just for context, 4-H is a program that kids are able to do throughout the year. If they pick horses or cows or chickens or whatever else, they learn all the things about them and raise the animal and then give it exhibit or different stuff on it. And it's a pretty big thing here in the state. It usually all kind of coalesces at the fair. And then the last one you have over in eastern Idaho is the Bannock County Fair. It'll be August 5th to the 10th. There'll be carnival rides. There's supposed to be a really nice car show, I was saying, from the research I was looking at. There's also there, again, 4-H activities going on, and then a bunch of different sponsorships from different local businesses there, so you can see and get to know the community a little better if you're new to the area. But that kind of brings us to northern Idaho, and if you want to go over that there, John.
Yeah, northern Idaho County Fairs. There's the Banter County Fair, which is from August 13 to 17. I don't have any details on that one, but it's a fair. I'm sure there's food and games and events and rides. It's a fair. It'll be fun. Go to it. Then there's the Shoshone County Fair, July 22 to 30. There's going to be junior rodeos, the Gymkhana events, which are equestrian games. Sounds awesome. There's a Moto Rodeo, which also sounds awesome. There's parades. There's an open saddle series rodeo, which, I mean, add anything to rodeo and that's great. Then there's truck and tractor pulls, which
Those
also are
really
awesome.
Cool. If you don't know what
And then
those
there's an antique tractor pull.
Ooh.
So pull as much crap as you can with your really old tractor. Sounds awesome. So yeah, go check out the Shoshone County Fair. Maybe try and pronounce words, but whatever, I can't. Yeah, no,
sadly, that's
fair
not what we're
season's going to
known
be
for
awesome.
here.
No, it's really not, sadly. Maybe we should be known for that, but yeah, no, fair season should be fun. For those of you who go to fairs, it's going to be a blast. We may or may not this year, depending on what else is going on in my life. But yeah, go check them out. Go have fun.
And I think that the tractor pulling happens most areas in the state. I know the main one I was able to find that was saying that was going to be there was the Shoshone one. But if you've never gone to any of them, I actually met a gentleman that did it before, and he was like showing me out in the yard while he was practicing and stuff with the tractor. But you have the pulling part that's like how much you can pull. But there's another part to it, which is where you're basically trying to put the tractor into a wheelie, but you're also trying to hold a certain amount of weight. I think it's either on the front or back end, and try to perfectly balance the tractor and drive it. And so you have to have the perfect amount of throttle and shifting and balance to keep the truck on, the tractor on a wheelie, but also balance the weight. And so the prize is given in a sense to the guys that can basically balance the most weight on their tractor while wheeling and driving along. In the Treasure Valley, if you have more kids, shall we put that? The Canyon County Fair is a little bit more friendly to that compared to the main state fair, which a lot of us refer to it just as the Boise Fair, but technically it's the state Western Idaho Fair. That one can be a lot more grand and big and a lot of people and stuff. But if you want something that's a little bit more hometown, maybe not quite as busy, but you get all the fixings that you usually would get at a fair, then the Caldwell Fair is a fair bet. Plus, I swear, if you've moved to the state and you're feeling really bad about getting a cowboy hat, as a person who likes hats, the best time to get them, honestly, is at the fairs. A lot of the cowboy hat dealers will move through all the fairs and be at them. And you can get some really high-quality hats, and they'll make sure to fit it for you and all that and everything. And they're actually not cheap. They're usually quite well done if you're getting it from one of the quality brands that are at them, and you can get it for a pretty decent price. Side note there if you're looking for a cowboy hat. With that said, thank you for watching the entire show. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informational. If we missed any important points or got something wrong, please reach out to us via email at lyimedia@protonmail.com, on Twitter at @LocalYocalIdaho. We appreciate your support and feedback as we work to bring you the most interesting and important stories from across Idaho. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.